Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back. This is October 18th, 2019. It's our Budget Committee. We are coming back to order and proceed with business. We had 3 hours this morning when we were together and talked about SDOT, our Seattle Department of Transportation, and then also our first information about TNCs. And this afternoon, we're going to be focusing on the workers' issues and what the TNC project that we're talking about, what kind of protections it can provide workers. So that's going to be our main focus this afternoon. I also want to note for my colleagues and for the record that when we talked about TNCs, and item number 2 on the proposed tax fee reduction and spending resolution, there was a correction, and Council Central staff and Amy Gore mentioned that. Thank you very much earlier today. And so that chart has been updated now to accurately reflect the estimated revenues with the proposed 0.82 tax option. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for catching that so early and being able to give us an updated chart. Okay, so we're going to continue with the TNCs. We will have public comment, as we mentioned earlier, at the conclusion of this. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And just a reminder, once again, our public testimony, public comment, public meeting, the next big one will be next Tuesday, or this coming Tuesday, October 22nd, 5:30 here in Chambers. Everybody's welcome, and everybody will have 2 minutes to speak unless you're in a group, and then we will allow a 5-minute total. Okay, so let's get going here. Worker protections, and Karina Bull, thank you for being here. You by yourself? You and Lisa are taking it?
Yeah.
All right,
Hi.
great.
I am Karina Bull with Council Central staff.
Lisa Kay, Council Central staff.
Great, nice to have you both here. Thank you. All right, who's leading off?
I'll lead. Good afternoon, everyone. As noted, the next round of today's discussion will continue to address the mayor's suite of proposals related to transportation network companies, referred to as TNCs. The mayor has transmitted 5 pieces of legislation for the council's consideration. Earlier today, Amy Gore from Central staff discussed an ordinance reducing existing TNC licensing fees, a new tax on TNC rides, and a resolution on spending priorities for revenues generated by the new tax. The focus now is on 2 pieces of legislation that would establish worker protections for TNC drivers: the TNC Driver Minimum Compensation Ordinance and the TNC Driver Deactivation Rights Ordinance. I'll provide a brief background on the issues facing TNC drivers, an overview of the proposals, and identify issues for possible policy consideration. For reference, there's a budget deliberation paper and the text of the pieces of legislation on the agenda, and then there's this slide deck to provide some visual flair for the discussion.
And as you're going to visual flair, I want to say thank you to Council Members Juarez, Council President Harrell, Council Member Gonzalez, and Council Member Pacheco for joining us this afternoon. Please, give us the flair.
There it is. So first part of the discussion is regarding the TNC Driver Minimum Compensation Ordinance. Background for this legislation is that the TNCs rely on a business model that classifies drivers as independent contractors, which means that they are not subject to the protections of Seattle's minimum wage and other workplace laws, which include protections against discrimination, wage and hour requirements, such as meal periods and rest breaks, and reimbursement for other expenses. And they also do not receive worker benefits like paid sick leave, workers' compensation, insurance, and they also have to pay their own equivalent of payroll taxes. As some more background, there was a study last year by the Economic Policy Institute which showed that nationwide, Uber drivers earn an average of about $11.77 after deducting Uber fees and vehicle expenses. That went down to $10.87 when also deducting the equivalent of payroll taxes, and then landed at $9.21 an hour after deducting an additional amount for the cost of a modest benefits package. So the mayor's proposed legislation is premised upon the exigent need to address some of these gaps, and it does so through an evaluation process to develop a minimum compensation standard for TNC drivers. And then the second piece has a requirement for the mayor to transmit legislation to recommend implementation of a minimum compensation standard. For the evaluation process, the goalpost is for it to be completed by March 31st of next year. Finance and Administrative Services would conduct the study in coordination with the Office of Labor Standards. And there would be a requirement to look at a range of data sources and to engage with stakeholders and to eventually come up with a recommendation for a minimum compensation standard that would be comprised of at least the Seattle minimum wage for large employers, which next year will be $16.39. And that would be accompanied by reasonable expenses, which would be comprised of mileage costs, that's vehicle expenses, and also non-mileage costs, which would be payment for things such as payroll taxes, the equivalent of sick leave, family medical leave, and some different kinds of insurance. FAS would be authorized to consider payment for 3 different types of time that are associated with a TNC ride. They're referred to as the available time, dispatch time, and passenger platform time. Basically, that encompasses the time that a TNC driver is waiting for a ride, driving to a ride to pick up a passenger, and then actually has the passenger in the vehicle. The content of the study, as I already mentioned, would include stakeholder engagement, a review of data sources. The ordinance does lay out, or the legislation lays out, 12 possible areas of evaluation and permits FAS to contract with an academic or policy organization for part of the study. And the executive also says that there are plans to partner with Department of Neighborhoods for outreach. The future legislation would need to be transmitted by May 1st of next year. There's no stated date for implementation of the legislation, but the executive's public materials have indicated July 1 as a goalpost. Any questions thus far?
Go ahead, Council President.
I just sort of need to know when you're switching from minimum compensation. I could wait to the end of the compensation piece where you aren't going to the deactivation yet, were you?
There are 2 issues for identification with the minimum compensation ordinance.
Just keep going.
Okay, so in the areas of evaluation, the legislation suggests 12 possible areas. They're not mandated, and it's not an exhaustive list. There was an issue ID that there could be additional information that signals the council's intent to focus on something along the lines of the TNC fees that are applied to every ride of a driver. The business model is premised upon the TNCs subtracting certain amounts from the passenger fare, and that could it's a service fee, it's commissions. There could be a cancellation fee if that happens. And so the study, if this was identified in the legislation, would be looking at what is the passenger fare, out of that amount, what does the driver earn, and what does the TNC earn to provide a more complete picture of information to help inform the final recommendation. The next item that was identified is a technical issue, and in this legislation, the concept of dispatch platform time is critical to the evaluation. It is not defined in this legislation. The definition would not need to be reinvented or invented. It just could be ported over from the other ordinance regarding driver deactivation rights, so it's more of a technical issue.
Got a question.
Please, go ahead.
Thanks for that overview, Katrina. I'm saying P1, P2, and P3 for those 3. Is that the correct terminology? So this is going to be somewhat complex work that the city will undertake. Good work, but complex, I think, because do we? Well, let me ask you a direct question. Do we think we have from the TNCs the information we are able to get now, whether publicly or through direct contractual relationships with them, the information necessary to do this work, or do we still need to get information from them to be able to figure out the driver compensation piece?
My sense is the latter, where more information would be helpful. I don't know to what extent and what exact kind of information would need to be gathered, but there are other cities who have collected this information, and that information could be weighted to apply to the size of Seattle and the number of trips that are happening in Seattle. New York City has developed their own minimum compensation standard, and so they have a lengthy report. So they've already thought about this, and so that could provide a baseline of information, I'm sensing.
See, the reason I ask is just to be transparent is I like the package that came to us from the mayor, and we're trying to digest and get through it during the budget. But one of my concerns is, as I said during the earlier sessions, it's been tough getting information from the TNCs, and we're now trying to figure out minimum compensation, as we should, as I look forward to, but still almost a delayed tactic because we're having to rely. I mean, one approach could have been we just said, we just say that even these drivers we could set like a minimum wage for these independent contractors. Each independent contractor shall make $16.39 per hour. And then the onus is on one of the drivers to say, well, I didn't, and here's all my costs and everything else. Now, that's going to be a little problematic to enforce, too. But that was an approach that I considered some time ago. If we know exactly what the target is, just say, here it is. Because on the P1, P2, P3 model, as an example, would be when drivers are driving on multiple platforms. I was trying to figure out, well, which ones are they supposed to pay? Is it, let's say they're driving for Uber and Lyft. So whose dime are they on, so to speak? So it's going to get a little complex on getting this information. Can be done with some cooperation, but I just wanted to know, and you told me the answers, whether we had the existing information now to figure this stuff out. So it sounds like we're still going to need some more information from the TNCs.
Yes, and there's different ways of approaching that P1 available time where the driver is waiting. In New York City has developed what they call a utilization rate, and that utilization rate refers to the amount of time that the driver has a passenger in the car. And so if they're every hour, if they have 30 minutes with the passenger in their car, the utilization rate would be 50%. And so when a driver picks up a passenger, then whatever platform is responsible for that ride would end up paying for that available time, the P1 time, and then the utilization rate would help to inform what the payment would need to be for the driver. There's different methods of going about that, and that certainly could be something that could be addressed in the legislation for the evaluation to think about.
Can I ask a question that relates to fees and costs here, but not necessarily to what the driver gets, and that's surge pricing? There's times when, as we all know, that the cost of a ride is significantly higher than at other times. And does the driver get any of that, or does it all go to the company? Because it doesn't seem right to me that if the driver is stuck in the middle of traffic, can't get to pick up the passenger, that the company is getting the additional, the surge price as contrasted to going in the driver's pocket.
I don't have a solid answer for that, but my knowledge is that the TNCs are charging a service fee and a commission on every fare. And so if the commission is consistently a certain percentage, say it's 33%, then my sense would be if the passenger is paying more, then the driver would get would have the balance of the additional amount of money that the customer is paying. I don't know if that's actually the case, but again, that is something that is actually identified in the proposed legislation as an area of evaluation. It falls into the language of TNC incentives, and if there's an interest in making sure that TNC incentives include surge pricing, that could be added to the legislation as well as a parenthetical.
One issue I wanted to flag as well, and I've raised this publicly, is I think this is great work. We're looking at the driver minimum compensation for the TNCs. All of this work we're doing will still have an impact on legacy taxi drivers and for-hire drivers. This abundance of vehicles on the streets transporting people has a negative effect. That's why this morning I brought up this transportation assistance voucher concept. And so in this work, this body of work, one of the ideas I've just explored is how it even affects the legacy taxi drivers as well. They're still competing, they're still in the same space. And again, even from the taxi drivers, we're getting conflicting information on what they're making. We're doing a lot of work on the TNC drivers, and rightfully so, but we still have a lot of taxi drivers out there as well that are trying to make a decent wage.
All right, very good.
Okay. The next ordinance is the TNC driver deactivation rights ordinance. As background, let's move ahead, there it is. As background for this proposed legislation, both Uber and Lyft, the two largest TNCs operating in Seattle, require drivers to sign a mandatory arbitration agreement as a term of service. And when this is signed, it means that the driver waives rights to resolve a dispute in a court of law. This kind of mandatory arbitration agreement is becoming more common in employment and consumer contracts. It has increased from 1992 from 2% to over 55% of employment contracts in that 27-year period. There are a range of consequences from mandatory arbitration agreements. There have been studies by Economic Policy Institute and other organizations that show that when workers are engage in private arbitration agreements, there are fewer instances of workers winning those cases. There are lower damages than in a court of law, and because of this, fewer filings. So again, the mayor's proposal for this legislation, premised upon another exigent need, is legislation that proposes a separate voluntary process for TNC drivers to challenge deactivation. So right now, if a driver was deactivated and felt that it was unfair, it would need to go to private arbitration. This separate process consists of three pieces: deactivation rights, a deactivation appeals panel, and a driver resolution center. So for the deactivation rights, it establishes 4 rights. Drivers cannot be subjected to what's called an unwarranted deactivation. The TNCs are required to provide written notices to the drivers before a deactivation and upon deactivation. Drivers have the right to challenge all permanent and temporary deactivations, subject to some eligibility standards that we can discuss later. And there is a right to representation at any deactivation challenge. And that applies to both a private arbitration and one that would happen via the driver deactivation appeals panel arbitration process. Drivers subject to some different criteria would be able to have free representation from the Driver Resolution Center for their deactivation challenges. The legislation establishes a deactivation appeals panel arbitration process, which would be voluntary for the TNCs and TNC drivers, which means that the TNCs and TNC drivers, by mutual agreement, could use this panel arbitration process instead of a private arbitration. Wouldn't be required. It would be something that they both agree to as a different path. The panel arbitration would result in a decision that is final and binding, that offers legal and equitable relief to the driver. That means that a driver could be awarded double the amount owed, double damages, and also could have something like reinstatement be ordered. The process happens along a prescribed timeline, and that could be as little as 32 days or up to 107 days. In contrast to private arbitration, that is a much quicker process. Private arbitration under the American Arbitration Association rules, which is what both Uber and Lyft use currently, it would take 75 days just to get to a point where a hearing date would be scheduled. The cost for this process would be nothing to the driver. And the TNC and the Driver Resolution Center, which we'll talk about later, would each pay half the cost of a neutral arbitrator. The TNC would pay full cost if the driver is not represented by the Driver Resolution Center. And part of this idea for the panel arbitration process is that it would consist of a neutral arbitrator, and then on the panel would also be what's called a panel partisan member. Each of these members would be representing the interest of the TNC or the driver, and the city would not pay for the cost of these partisan panel members. Last, the Driver Resolution Center is an organization that the city would contract with. It would be a nonprofit organization that the city would contract with for outreach, consultation, and representation of drivers. There are requirements that it be nonprofit and affiliated with an organization that has experience working with workers and grievances and is not funded or excessively controlled by a TNC. So next, there are 7 issues that have been identified for the council's consideration as possible policy issues. The first one is regarding rulemaking.
I'm sorry.
We've got a question.
I'd rather, I don't know, I'll follow your lead, but I had questions about the ordinance overall. I don't know if they're addressed in the issues. One of the challenges we have is we're having to basically have this committee discussion on this legislation during budget, and so I think we have to take advantage of it a little bit. So I'm sorry to poke around on this stuff, but we have to do it because someone insisted that it be done on the full budget process. I can't remember who that was.
Who could that have been, Council President?
I can hold up a mirror for you if you'd like, Council President.
So, so if I understand the arbitration process, so it's voluntary. So if I'm a driver and I say, well, I'd like to use the voluntary arbitration process set up by the city with this driver's resolution center, but the TNC says, no, we disagree, then the driver doesn't get an opportunity to use it, right? Because it has to be voluntary by both sides. I'm assuming that's the way the legislation works. Is that
You
fair?
are correct. The way that this legislation is set up is that the driver still could have a representative from the Driver Resolution Center to represent them at a private arbitration. So one of the rights that's established by the law would be the right to representation by the Driver Resolution Center in either a private arbitration or this panel arbitration process.
Okay, so the Driver Resolution Center is more than just a forum to hear an arbitration. They also assign representatives to be that person should the TNC not choose to use the Driver Resolution Center.
Correct.
So was there any thought just given to making the Driver Resolution Center mandatory, that Uber or Lyft or any TNC, they just, this is the only forum with which to go?
Well, given that the drivers have entered into a terms of service with these TNCs saying that they agree to private arbitration, it makes sense for this to be a voluntary process because the drivers have already agreed to pursue private arbitration when they become a driver.
So we don't have the legal authority to supersede that contractual arrangement between the driver and the TNC. So that's, but can't we establish a legal framework by which TNCs operate? Isn't that what we're doing? Can't we say all driver disputes are handled in this Driver Resolution Center? Isn't that a possibility?
Well, the Supreme Court of the United States favors a mandatory arbitration agreement. There was the Epic Systems Supreme Court case which established a respect for mandatory arbitration agreements that says that they need to be followed if they're in the law.
No, we're making it mandatory. We're not at all deviating from the Supreme Court's decision. We're saying it's mandatory. It's just the forum is the Driver Resolution Center.
So what the Supreme Court is saying is that the private employers have the right to make it mandatory, and if a worker or a consumer agrees to that, there's no deviation from it.
I'm not getting where. So in that agreement between are you saying that I'm not perhaps as familiar with the ruling as you are. So we can't dictate the forum, we're not deviating from mandatory arbitration, we're just dictating the forum, which is our forum.
So under the terms of the agreement that drivers signed when they enter into agreements with Uber and Lyft, they are agreeing to the everything of an arbitration. They are agreeing to the forum and the process that's laid out by the American Arbitration Association rules. And what the Supreme Court has said is that that needs to be followed. And so what this law does is set up a separate process that would be quicker for the drivers and less expensive for the drivers because they wouldn't be paying anything, and also ostensibly for the TNCs with a neutral arbitrator that would be vetted and contracted with by the city. So it's got some components in place that would protect the driver and provide a fair process and would apparently seem to benefit all parties.
So, and where's the $3.5 million? Where's that money? Where's that what's the basis for that amount? That seems high for a center for 1 year.
So the spending resolution that the mayor proposed has up to $3.5 million to fund the Driver Resolution Center and any of the work that the city would need to do in order to administer these worker rights. So that might include Office of Labor Standards if the minimum compensation standard proposal is passed by council, if FAS needs any database or other kind of staffing needs for this. Central staff has asked the executive for more information to itemized cost that constitute the up to $3.5 million. The executive doesn't have that information at this time. The sense is that there's a recognition that it could cost a fair amount of money, and so there's $3.5 million that is identified for that. The executive doesn't have the number of deactivations that happen on an annual basis. There's anecdotal discussion that it happens a lot, and currently New York City has a study underway to actually study the number of deactivations that are happening there, and I'm not sure when that study will be released, but that would be helpful information to help guide the formation and the size and the breadth of the center.
Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Gonzalez and Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm not quite satisfied with the answer we're getting on arbitration, so I'm going to give it another go.
I just gave up. So.
I'm coming in for an attempted cleanup. So on arbitration, I guess, Karina, what I haven't heard clearly from you is a direct answer to Council President Harrell's office and question, and maybe it's because it's something that should be reserved for executive session rather than open session. And if that's the case, then you should just tell us so that we can stop
peppering you with questions.
Torturing ourselves and you and people watching on this question. So in this Supreme Court case that you're talking about, do you know the name of that case, by the way?
Epic? That's one of them. I'm sure there's a number of them.
Did you say Epic?
I think it's Epic.
Okay. So in the Epic case, does it say that the contract, when two people enter into the contract and it has an arbitration clause, if that arbitration clause also indicates the venue and the forum of where the arbitration needs to take place, then our law cannot supersede that chosen forum, that agreed upon forum in the contract. Is that what the case is? Is that what you're trying to tell us? So if we do arbitration, to Council President Harrell's point, right? We're not saying that arbitration shouldn't occur. We just want to mandate where that arbitration happens. So not AAA, or jams, or pick an arbitrator in the city. We want it to happen at the Dispute Resolution Center. Are you saying that is prohibited by the Epic Supreme Court case?
And I think this conversation is probably best left to an executive session.
All right.
I know that you're still not satisfied, but we'll get our attorneys to come in.
But what I will posit is that, what the Supreme Court did is signal the precedence of the Federal Arbitration Act in allowing employers to require certain things under their mandatory arbitration agreements that would need to be followed, and wanted to signal that there shouldn't be interference with that. I think the rest can be left for an executive session. I will add that California did pass last week an interesting law that prohibits employers from premising employment of new employees on signing mandatory arbitration agreements. So respecting the existing mandatory arbitration agreements, but not conditioning new employment on signing those.
So just, Katrina, just sort of clarifying something. So the rules of deactivation, in other words, you cited very well some of the common problems in the deactivation, such as a TNC driver deactivated because of an accident and it wasn't the driver's fault. Let's use that one as an example. And we heard a story at a press conference that was just devastating with a woman that it wasn't even her fault and she was deactivated and it was her sole source of income. But this forum, we can't really still change the rules by which the TNCs are deactivating. See, I was trying to figure out a forum that could sort of have a baseline notion of what kinds of things should be legitimate grounds for deactivation or not. But it seems like we're spending up to $3.5 million, I should say, up to, for another forum, which doesn't have to be used. And the arbitration is sort of a no-brainer if the rules are such that if the rules are sort of unfair, that you're just going to this forum and enforcing rules that are unfair. I still have the right to investigate to suspend you pending the investigation of an accident. So the rules could say that. We don't know whose fault it is, but until we find out you are deactivated. And so I don't know how we influence the rules of deactivation, not just the forum. And that's why I was hoping to have a centralized depository of information that we could sort of influence and control such that they have institutional knowledge. But it seems to me that we're setting up this deactivation center, which is just going to be one of many forums, and the unfairness to the driver continues because the rules are somewhat unfair.
Yeah, okay, so I think I'm better understanding what you're talking about. For the panel arbitration process that would take place at the Driver Resolution Center, the rules that arbitration would operate under would be developed by the Office of Labor Standards. So those rules that control the forum and the procedure and the evidentiary proceedings and the burden of proof, all of that would be yet to be issued. It would be determined by the Office of Labor Standards. They may adopt parts of the AAA rules and the JAMS rules. They may come up with other rules that they believe would result in a more fair process. But if the TNC and the TNC driver chose this alternative path for the panel arbitration process, it could look different than what happens in private arbitration. To your point, there is nothing right now in the legislation that would compel the TNCs to go towards that path, but there are some elements of the panel arbitration process that might be appealing. And some of those include the faster process, the decreased cost. The executive estimates that an arbitration under this process could be done, like, say, 3 to 5 in a day at the Driver Resolution Center, whereas a private arbitration might take 1 day or 2 days. I'm seeing, is that a nod yes or no?
No, yeah. There's a lot of, it's just a lot longer to go through a private arbitration process than it is to go through something like this.
Yeah, and so that's what the executive is positing as a benefit of going through this process. It would happen quicker, and because the Driver Resolution Center would be focusing on one subject matter, deactivations, there would be more of a familiarity with the subject matter. And
I'm sorry, I know Councilmember O'Brien's in the queue, but if we could just finish up this line of questioning. I guess really the ultimate policy question around the deactivation center in my mind is, has the ordinance as proposed created enough incentives to entice the TNCs to not simply categorically always decline participating in the deactivation rights ordinance, right? Because even when you talk about how this is a faster process, I see that more as a driver benefit and incentive than to the TNC, right? If somebody at the TNCs wants to prevent the driver from contesting the deactivation for whatever reason, they're going to opt for the more complex, belabored process of private arbitration through AAA or whatever form it is that they've agreed to in the contract. So I think that's the area that I'm interested in looking at more closely and specifically are what are the incentives that encourage mutual agreement to utilization of the deactivation rights ordinance. And I'm not quite convinced that the pot has been sweetened enough. Is that right? That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pot has been sweetened enough to elicit that level of compliance, and maybe it is also an opportunity to take another look at the deactivation rights ordinance to make sure that there's a requirement of good faith participation. I don't think I've seen that language used, but perhaps I've missed it. And Karina, if I did, I'm sure, I'm confident that you will let me know, because you love to pay attention to the details, which I really appreciate. So I think, most of our dispute resolution processes at the city do impose some level of good faith understanding, and some sort of repercussion if good faith, if somebody determines that good faith has not actually been present in sort of the engagement of making this decision. So I think those are areas that I'd be interested in exploring.
Yeah. I mean, I did not notice the words good faith, and it's at the heart of the issue of whether or not this will be a successful different path, if whether or not TNCs will actually use it. So yes, you've identified, I think, the heart of the issue, and it's addressed in at least one of the issues. Is there enough incentive for TNCs to participate? And it's certainly important to explore the different ways that might incentivize them more.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember O'Brien.
Shifting slightly, question about the data on deactivation. Is that something that we could just require that they report to us? I mean, is there any federal legislation or something that says that that's protected and they don't have to give it to us?
I'm not aware of protections that would prohibit collecting that data.
Okay. Colleagues, if that's useful data, similar to the other data we're trying to get, I'm intrigued in figuring out ways that either we can require it or maybe penalize if they don't provide the data, give them an option that there might be a tax on the license or whatever to do the business if they don't provide the data, but if they provide the data, then that's helpful. I mean, they clearly have it. And the fact that they're not sharing it is, I don't see what business purpose that serves on their end. And it would certainly be helpful from a policy perspective to know.
Great. Okay, please continue.
The first issue is in regards to rulemaking. The legislation identifies at least 8 issues for rulemaking. The memo identifies 5 of them. And for example, the director would be defining what an unwarranted deactivation is. The rules would clarify driver eligibility to challenge deactivations, pre-hearing procedures, et cetera. So any rulemaking process is going to entail notice and a period of public comment to ensure that the director's decision is not arbitrary. Setting parameters on the rulemaking process could make it even more or less susceptible to challenge as an arbitrary decision by the director. Parameters could also signal council's intent on what's important in the development of the rules and the rulemaking process. There are examples of council setting parameters in the Wheelchair Accessible Services Fund. Some that are suggested in the memo include prioritizing a process that requires transparency, inclusion, and language access for the stakeholders, consideration of just cause standards, evidence-based criteria, fair treatment, transparency, consistency, and other principles. So those are things that could be considered for one particular rulemaking area or for more.
So I like the issue raised. So this sort of suggests that the OLS director has authority, legal authority, to do a lot of this work, which seems like we would have had authority to define the form, though. I guess I just go back to that issue because it seems like we're suggesting they could define deactivation, the basis for deactivation, right? And the pre-hearing procedures. So we're sort of delving, I think, into the contract that the drivers sign with the TNC a little bit, it sounds to me, unless that contract is just silent on these issues.
So to make sure I'm understanding, when you mention the forum, are you talking about the forum for the panel arbitration or the forum for the private arbitration?
So I'm just reading the sort of suggestion here. It says, let's say the definition, the proposed legislation would give the director the authority to issue rules on the definition of an unwarranted deactivation. Is that just for the the Driver Resource Center?
So the definition of what constitutes an unwarranted deactivation would apply to a private arbitration and to this panel arbitration process. So
Right.
you are correct. It would create a legal right that could be handled in the private arbitration or the panel arbitration.
So I think, just to follow your rationale, if the director has the authority to make that kind of rule, I don't see why the director could make a rule as to where the arbitrations would go. What? Anyway, I mean, we're suggesting that the OLS director has the authority to do all of this stuff, to define what a deactivation is. Isn't that already in the contract between the driver and the TNC company?
I can look into that for you and learn more about it.
I have to assume that all that would be in their contract between the driver and the TNC company. So, anyway, these are good issues to spot if the director has that authority. Apparently, they do.
All right, Councilmember Herbold, Councilmember Gonzalez, and then I think Councilmember O'Brien is back to you.
I just want to signal a sort of general reaction I have to the breadth of policy issues that we're delegating to the OLS director to address in rulemaking. I may be having this visceral response, and it may not be an appropriate response, but it seems like we're delegating a lot of policy choices in this rulemaking process, as opposed to my familiarity with rulemaking is generally about how to implement the policy that has been established by the council. So I don't have anything more like detailed than that right now, but I would like to take a more careful look at these issues.
I think it's a very good point. All right, please proceed.
Yeah, okay. So on that same note.
I apologize. I think Councilmember Gonzalez, you had another
Oh, I was
comment.
actually going to make the same exact
Okay.
comment that Councilmember
Very
Herbold
good.
did.
All right,
So,
thank you.
We got a mind meld happening over here.
Under the ordinance, it would establish a right for a TNC driver to elect a representative, including an advocate from the Driver Resolution Center, to represent them during any deactivation challenge. And whether the Driver Resolution Center would agree to represent that driver is subject to the Driver Resolution Center's discretion. Which appears to be a fair amount of discretion. There are no criteria listed in the legislation as to why the Driver Resolution Center would agree or disagree to represent a driver. So that has been identified as a possible area for rulemaking. It could also be identified in the ordinance itself. And if it is identified as an area for rulemaking, then again, there could be contemplation of setting parameters to guide that rulemaking process.
Okay. All right.
Okay. The next issue is regarding notice of impending deactivation. The legislation would require TNCs to provide two kinds of notice to drivers regarding a deactivation. One of them would be notice of an impending deactivation. That's before it happens. They would be required to provide it 14 days before the activation, and then a notice upon deactivation. The latter notice upon deactivation is required to have a certain amount of information in it, written statement of the reasons, the effective date, and the right to challenge the deactivation. That content is not required for the notice of impending deactivation, so the result would be that drivers would receive a notice of impending deactivation with nothing in it other than this is going to happen in 14 days. So possible consideration is adding that same body of language that's in the upon deactivation notice to the impending deactivation notice so that the driver can begin preparing immediately for what's going to happen in 2 weeks.
Great. Councilmember O'Brien has a question.
That seems like a really logical option. Thank you for providing that. I'm curious, do you think it was an oversight that it's not in there, or were there some technical reasons why they thought that wouldn't work?
I asked the executive if there would be any harm in adding that information. I don't know the answer to the first part of your question, but the executive has indicated that they don't forecast any harm in adding that information to the notice of impending deactivation.
Sign me up as a supporter of option A then.
Great. Good. Please continue.
Next issue is in regards to what the legislation calls a partisan panel member. Again, the panel arbitration process consists of a neutral arbitrator that is contracted by the city and that is vetted and contracted by the city, and then an equal number of what's called a partisan panel member. These panel members would represent the interest of the TNC and the TNC driver. The decision of the panel would be by majority vote. The city wouldn't pay for these partisan panel members. This term is not defined in the legislation, and it could be a bit confusing as to what that partisan panel member's role is. Are they an advocate? Are they another professional arbitrator? It's unclear from the current language. There is one sentence that says the panel's decision in any case shall be by a majority vote with each arbitrator holding one vote instead of referring to the panel member. So this is an area that could be cleared up with an amendment. The proposal could be changed to define what a partisan panel member is. That could be left as yet another area for rulemaking with parameters, or simply the law could be amended to replace the word arbitrator with panel member. And in checking with the executive, there was no express concern about changing that language from arbitrator to panel member.
You have a question? All right, please. Just watching this.
So it doesn't actually even define the number of partisan panel members. It just says they need to be equal.
Correct. And so that's yet another area subject to rules.
Okay.
I like it that you keep looking down here to see who is going to jump on the question about rulemaking.
You're following my eyes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like, you know, each side gets one and then there's a neutral arbitrator. The neutral arbitrator, does it talk about how that arbitrator is selected?
So the city would contract with a list of arbitrators to perform this work. So the city would do the work of vetting who the city believes is a neutral arbitrator and one that could fairly arbitrate these cases. And then the city would provide that list to the Driver Resolution Center and the TNCs in the event. So then the TNCs and Driver Resolution Center would decide which arbitrator they wanted from that list and move forward and pay for half of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think defining the partisan panel member, I'm trying to envision how I'm trying to understand what is envisioned in this legislation. I get the idea that there would be essentially an advocate of each side with the arbitrator. And then I guess the assumption would be that if both advocates disagreed with the arbitrator, they could override the arbitrator. But really, the arbitrator is just making a decision, and there's advocates on both sides present.
Correct. The neutral arbitrator would seem to be able to carry the decision one way or another. The executive has stated that they envision these partisan panel members not necessarily to be attorneys, but it would be a staff member of the Driver Resolution Center and an employee of the TNC. Again, the executive thinks this will lead to lower cost because it's not an attorney necessarily, although it could be an attorney who's an employee of the TNC.
It would, I think some clarity on this would be helpful. So I like the variety of options you have there. It gives the impression that this is 3 equal people or 7 equal people or whatever it is. But if it seems like it might be clearer to just be calling it there's an arbitrator and an advocate on each side or advocates on each side, just to be clear of what's going on. But I don't know if there's legal reasons why we use these terms to be consistent with other, I don't understand arbitration laws as well as some of my lawyer colleagues to my right and left.
Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to respond to on that?
The one thing I'll add is that I'm not an expert either, but I have read in some of the research about the impacts of mandatory arbitration that labor arbitration can, in the context of a of unions and management arbitrations, a panel process has been shown to be successful, and perhaps this is a way of trying to replicate that in a different forum.
Chair Bagshaw, can I appreciate the reference to labor arbitration. I do think it's a little different. It's not necessarily apples to apples, so I don't want to step into the inadvertently step into an apples to apples comparison in that regard. I mean, this is really much more about contract based arbitration, which is in my mind fundamentally different, in large part because it skews in favor of whomever the corporation is, as opposed to labor arbitration, which tends to be a fairer process for the represented worker. But I think if there are lessons to be learned from how labor arbitration is structured, then perhaps that could be a good model for us to consider as we address some of the concerns flagged by Councilmember O'Brien, which I share. Frankly, I don't particularly like the phrase partisan panel member. It just seems like an odd phrasing in the context of this conversation, and I think it will lead most people to immediately think that somebody's a Republican and somebody's a Democrat, which is a little weird in this context. But I think this is an area that needs some significant improvement and clarification. And I am of the general principle at this point that I don't think that this is something we should relegate to rulemaking. I think it should be included as part of the ordinance, because I see it as a fundamental policy decision and a fundamental part of the structure of the overall concept here.
Great.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next issue is about the cost of arbitration, and Councilmember Gonzalez, this speaks to what you were bringing to our attention earlier. The cost of the panel arbitration would be shared equally by the TNC and the Driver Resolution Center, but only if the Driver Resolution Center is representing the TNC driver. The legislation would require the TNC to pay for all of the panel arbitration if the TNC driver is not represented by the Driver Resolution Center. So this indicates less incentive for the TNC to participate in this panel arbitration, and so the council may want to consider whether mitigating the cost for the panel arbitration could incur more situations where the TNC would actually participate in it, or if there are other ways, again, to think about incentivizing the TNCs to use this process. So possible options include requiring the TNC to pay for half of the cost of the panel arbitration, regardless of whether the TNC driver is represented by the Driver Resolution Center. Again, there are many things that have been suggested as left to OLS rules. This could be another one. It could be addressed in the ordinance itself as well.
Chair Bagshaw, may I?
Please.
On this particular one, I think in order to make a better policy decision here, it would be helpful to put this question into context. So we don't know what the fee will be to participate in the dispute. The deactivation resource center process, but we probably have some sense of how much it costs to participate in the existing arbitration process as indicated by whatever contract has been engaged in. So I think it would be good to get a contextual comparison of how much TNCs are paying currently for arbitration that might shine some light on whether or not this particular incentive, i.e. the cost of participating in this arbitration process versus the private arbitration process creates a greater incentive or not. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay. Council President Harrell.
Just a quick comment. I was going to sort of say it at the end, but this is sort of a weird process that we're setting up a little bit. I was really excited about when I first heard about this Driver Resolution Center, because I thought, hearing the horrors of deactivation, there's a neutral forum that everyone's required to go to, and that's where there's going to be justice. And this is a different system. Number one, they don't have to use it. The the TNCs could simply say, I'm not opting for that. And then the Driver Resource Center has proposed they don't even have to represent the person. I choose not to represent you. So the driver still seems that they are vulnerable to the unfairness of a deactivation. It just seems to me. And then the deactivation center itself, because a person can represent the person at the center, they have to have some kind of wall up, I take it, because you're having coffee every day with a person, all of a sudden someone at the center is now ruling as a neutral arbiter in a matter, and their colleague is one of the representing parties. You have to have a wall up, which seems strange. And so this model for me is now becoming a little problematic. I think we can fix it somehow, but it just seems a little strange.
Okay.
And just to clarify, so I will follow up on those concerns, and just to make sure that we're on the same page of understanding, the arbitrator would not work at the Driver Resolution Center. The arbitrator would be a
Thanks for clarifying
person.
that. I was
Yeah.
thinking they were an employee there too. So the arbitrator, that person comes in
Correct.
and they're not an everyday
Correct.
employee at the, got it.
Correct. So that it's a separate list of professional arbitrators that the city would vet
Got it.
and pay for.
Okay, got it. Thanks
Yeah.
for clarifying that point.
Thank you. Anything else down here? All right.
Okay. The final issue that has been identified, well, actually, it's almost final issue, is regarding the effective date of this proposed legislation, which is July 1, 2020. By this date, OLS has a lot of work to have accomplished. Should this be passed, they would have issued a request for proposals for the Driver Resolution Center. They would have completed rulemaking on a vast number of areas. They'd be close to establishing the deactivation appeals panel. Given all of the work necessary for implementing this legislation, the effective date could be challenging. It may not allow enough time for TNCs to comply with all of the rules regarding what is an unwarranted deactivation. The legislation and the rules would go into effect around the same time, most likely. The effective date might result in a situation where TNC drivers would have rights, but scant means for accessing the benefits or protection of those rights if they have the right to a panel arbitration that isn't fully put into place yet, if they have a right to representation by a representative from the Driver Resolution Center, but there is no Driver Resolution Center yet, so it certainly could result in a disconnect. So the council may want to consider delaying the effective date of the legislation to allow more time to prepare for implementation.
Is that the last one?
That's the last one.
Can I just
You absolutely
make some
can.
comments on this one?
You bet.
So I appreciate the signal that the effective date is ambitious, shall we say. I'm not sure that I'm prepared to suggest or support an amendment to the effective date. But I wonder if there are other tools available to the city council that will allow us to have a greater degree of confidence in being able to monitor the progress towards stated milestones that would give us all a higher level of confidence that we're on track to be ready for implementation on July 1st of 2020.
Okay. And so I can put some thought into what those milestones might be.
Yeah, milestones and sort of mechanisms by which the city council could monitor achievement or non-achievement of those milestones. Sort of a bit of a dashboard, perhaps, if you will.
Drive through a gate, you can keep going. If you
Right.
don't get through that gate,
Right. So it's, again, I think it's, I understand why it's ambitious. I can appreciate that it is an ambitious effective date. But I think that, in order to make sure that we aren't in a situation, in May of 2020 or June of 2020 that this is not ready for prime time. I think the sooner the council has an opportunity to understand that or appreciate that and take action in collaboration with the executive and stakeholders, the better off we will all be.
Great. There are some technical issues. Did you want
Yes,
to continue those? It's on the last page.
Technical issues, two of them. In the recitals for this legislation, it states in 2018, the two largest TNCs accounted for 24 million trips in the city and King County. It's an oversight. It is just the city. It is not in King County. There would be a lot more if King County were included in that. So the council could consider striking that language in King County. The second technical issue is duplicate language in the remedies section. It says twice that for a first violation of the ordinance, there can be an assessment of liquidated damages in an amount up to twice the unpaid compensation due. And then it says for subsequent violations, the panel can assess an amount twice, that's up to twice the amount due. So it's duplication. I checked with the executive and it was an oversight. So there could be just inserting the word for any violation, there could be liquidated damages in the amount of twice the amount that's due.
Okay. Good catch.
Okay.
But anything else on this?
And that completes my prepared discussion for this afternoon.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And anybody else want to bring in any last comments for Karina? Okay. Well, we are at the end then. I appreciate that. Lisa, do you have anything else that you would like to bring forward? All right. So now we get to turn to public comment. And I think we've got over 50 people who have signed up. So at this point, I'm going to suggest that we do a minute and a half for testimony. And if you hear somebody speak something that seems very similar to what you were going to say, please feel free to amend it or to add to it. It's very helpful rather than just hearing the same thing over and over again. So with that, we will get going. And I'm going to ask you, please, when I call your name, to come up to the microphone. We will have Takek Gobina. If I slaughter your name, then please correct me. Bob Galbranson and Lada Ahmed. And welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Takele Gobana. I am a union representative, Teamster 117, and a former Uber driver, and one of the Abbey's Driver Association founder. I actually want to make one remark. Today is Juma. This room could be in full, but it's Juma 2 p.m. today. This time is a prayer time. That's why a lot of driver community couldn't make down here. It's a sort of prayer time. So that's one thing to keep in mind. My comment is very simple. Here in Seattle, drivers are united around three things. Number one is we all deserve a fair pay. Number two, we want our city to be the first city in the nation to address and warrant deactivation. Number three, drivers want to have a voice. It's their livelihood, and we want to make sure that we have a voice when we work on this platform. We are so grateful, the council and the mayor, for considering this fair share proposal because it actually addresses those three top priorities. It's something that we need to get it done. It's so crucial for driver community. It's also very important to make sure that we have affordable housing option as part of this work plan. And also we want to make sure that the Seattle Growth works for everyone, which include drivers community and everyone who participates in this industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming down today. Bob, then Lata, then Don Creary.
Yes, my name is Bob Goldbronson.
Just come closer to the microphone, please.
Or the taller one might be better. There you go.
Okay, is that better? Is that better? Okay. My name is Bob Goldbronson, and I lost my arm due to cancer, but I'm not here to talk about that. I want to talk about losing my job. I started driving Uber after I retired from my regular job. and Social Security and whatever savings I had don't quite make everything enough money there to pay the bills. So, and then after I was hit by an uninsured motorist, Uber shut off my app.
Oh, my goodness.
I called them and emailed them and went to the office with a copy of the police report. In the report, the driver of the other car admitted guilt. And then I went to Uber with the report, and Uber said there's nothing they can do about it. It wasn't my fault, and the other person admitted guilt, and I was fired. Uber calls it deactivation, but it's being fired. Before I retired, I worked for a small vending machine company. We filled bubblegum machines and kiddie rides in the lobbies of the grocery store. They treated me like family. When I lost my arm, my boss even came with me to the hospital. I don't expect that treatment from Uber, but drivers do deserve to be treated with human decency and respect. And I urge you to pass the Fair Share Plan. Drivers deserve the right to appeal deactivation.
Bob, thank you so much for coming down. Quite a story. Lotta, Don Creary, then Yimer and Darris.
Thank you, City Council members, for giving us this opportunity to be here. And my name is Lata Ahmed, and I'm an Uber driver. I'm happy to be part of the driver leader committees at the Teamster Union. Our driver community is diverse, comes from all across the world. This week alone, I have been meeting with at the Teamster Hall with the drivers who are Oromo, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Southern Sudan, Gambia, Bujami, Kenya, Ghana, Latino, Iranian, Senegalese, and the white folks too. Among 30,000 drivers, there are many cultural, traditional, and different politics. Probably 30,000 drivers, different opinion. Our diversity makes us strong. And what unites us is greater than what divides us. And that is what a union is, and unity, a place where we can come together to build unity and speak with more powerful voice. Drivers are united around 3 priorities. Fair pay, to give drivers a living wage after expensive. Protection from unfair deactivation. And having a powerful voice with Driver Support Center. All of these priorities are included in the Fair Share Plan. Thank you again for putting drivers' priorities back on the agenda at the City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Lotta. Hold on just a moment. Don Creary, Yimer, and then Jake Lindsay. Please, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Don Creary. Very nice to see you all again. There was a time several years ago when this industry, be it TNC drivers or taxi drivers, provided a middle-class livelihood for the people who did the job. Then in the years 14, 15, due to that disruption, that pay pretty much, in our case, was chopped in about half. And then the years preceding, it continued to get worse in other parts of the country. We saw in Denver, 60 cents a mile. Drivers are getting in the Bay Area, 80 cents a mile. In Los Angeles, 80 cents a mile. And these are markets where the cost of living is every bit as high as it is here. And they don't hesitate to push the pay down there. 80 cents a mile in Tacoma. So we know what the potential is, and it can get worse. In the lead up to Uber's IPO, they cut our pay twice. And in the prospectus to their shareholders, potential shareholders, they stated that they were experiencing a high level of driver discontent. They expected that discontent to continue due to ongoing reduction of drivers' incentives to get more profit. Reduction of driver incentives, that's cutting our pay to get further pay for the shareholders. So the situation we're in now is going to get worse. We really have to depend on you guys to step in as the regulatory authority, which you are, and assert your authority over, we are for-hire companies. You know, you can deal with the pay part of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don. Yimer, Jake, and then Ahmed Mohammed.
Yimer?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. And my name is Yimer Idris, Uber Black driver for 7 years and 8 months. My great concern this time is drivers' pay cut and rising Uber and Lyft commission. We started with 80-20 ratio, then increased it to 75 to 25, increase for Uber, decrease for drivers. Now we are at 60-40% ratio. On the other hand, cost of living and operating business has been rising faster than ever. We know riders pay fair amount for the service we provide, but Uber and Lyft are hiding significant amount of portion of the money from drivers, and they are keeping it for themselves. We need transparency and accountability to stop them from exploiting and stealing from the drivers' earning. We need this transparency. If I may give one simple fact, flat rate to and from downtown airport started with $50. Drivers get 40 and Uber gets 10. Flat rate increased 7 years ago to $55. Drivers get $41.25. Uber now is charging $64.90, and no penny is increased for drivers. And the same goes like Uber SUV and flat rates from here, downtown Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond. They are exploiting and stealing our commission. So Uber commission rose from $10 to $22.
Yimer, I'm going to have to ask you to.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Jake, Ahmed, and Uba Daran.
Hello, I'm Jake. I have been a 4.95 star Uber and Lyft driver for 4.5 years. I've given close to 10,000 trips. I have made sub-minimum wage after expenses every year I've worked for them. Most companies only reward workers who stick with them through the years, but I have never gotten a pay raise from Uber or Lyft. Rather, I have only gotten pay cuts from them, whether per minute and per mile decreases or cuts in the form of percentage, as my other drivers have said. In fact, just recently, Lyft started hiding from us drivers the amount the passenger pays for a ride, giving them free rein to take even more from us drivers on every fare. And in their stock letter to the Securities and Exchange Commission, as Don mentioned, Uber said we aim to reduce driver incentives to improve our financial performance. So the companies are openly announcing their plans to cut our pay even more, and we cannot let this stand. We drivers need and deserve this fair share legal plan, which will legally mandate a pay raise for drivers and give us legal protections against unfair deactivations. We drivers are the backbone of these multi-billion-dollar companies, and after expenses, literally get paid below minimum wage, a starvation wage. I can only afford my below-market apartment in Seattle by splitting it with my partner. Meanwhile, the Uber co-founder has a worth of over $4 billion and recently bought the most expensive home ever sold. If the company's leadership can take billions, we at least deserve a minimum wage, coverage after expenses. We at least deserve sick pay. We deserve basic job security protections against unfair algorithmic deactivations. So please pass this set of laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed? Then Uba Daran and Adam Abaker.
Thank you, council members. My name is Ahmed, and I am an Uber driver and also representing Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association, the first association of drivers, nonprofit organization registered with the Secretary of State in August 26, 2014. Uber and Lyft have been growing in Seattle and making millions of dollars off our hard work. yet many drivers are in deep poverty and continue to grow desperate. There are drivers living and sleeping inside their vehicles. Others have trouble paying their rents every month because of rising cost of living throughout our region. Some of drivers are forced to live very far away from their working area in downtown Seattle and the area where most of the rides are. This puts driver in a harsh traffic nightmare, forcing many to commute several hours every day. The drivers recognize that our region is facing a housing affordability crisis, and the drivers are not spared. Many drivers were former taxi cab drivers who own taxi medallions, their primary life of investment, and they've lost all of their money. Taxi drivers borrowed huge sums of money to buy their medallions. Throughout our lifetime, Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association has deeply been working with the drivers. For instance, many of the drivers are immigrant and have families back home. They have even a lot of problems giving back to their families.
Thank you.
We are suggesting a solidarity and resource center for the drivers.
Thank you.
A membership meeting and a collective driver advocacy.
Thank you.
Please give the money to the drivers.
Thank you. Uba? Adam, and then Rick Cooper.
Hi, my name is Uba.
You can bring the microphone down. There you go.
Yeah, my name is Uba. I'm one of the drivers. I've been doing this job, 3.5 years. I'm a full-time. I'm mother of 4 kids, which is, the car is mine, the maintenance and everything. I'm paying the double insurance. The Uber charge us, the insurance, and I have to pay, my business insurance on myself. And the deal was, when I signed the contract was 25%. But when I see, my statement, the Uber and Lyft, they deducted more than a 50%, which is ridiculous. We don't have any rights at all. We don't have, fair pay. We don't have, any. So that's, so thank you for you guys, and thank you for your listening. So that's it.
Thank you for coming. Adam? After Adam is Rick Hooper, and after Rick, we have Dustin Lambro.
Yeah, my name is, thank you for joining to City of Seattle Council. Yes, I'm trying to, I've been working almost 4 years. 2016, I was in an incident. The next day when I started driving with Uber, one of the drunk guy, he hit me on my face like 7 times. I didn't hit back. I was my second day driving, and the guy I'm picking his girlfriend to dropping off to his address. He punched me on my face. I didn't talk to him because at that time I don't know the policy. Like I didn't start. I'm a new guy. And then before I drop off, she canceled, and then I go out of that area, and then I called the police. Police came to. They didn't do nothing. And just I'm trying to send my message. We are driver. We need support for everywhere. At that time I told Uber, but Uber they didn't do nothing, and our insurance didn't do nothing until now. My cheek is swallowed until now, and I didn't talk because I'm a father for a beautiful girl. Her name is Rahaf. She's not here back home. I have to support my family. I have to work. That's why I didn't go to hospital, and I didn't go nothing. Yes, still I'm driving with Uber, and they stopped me to pick from everywhere to drop off to airport. Yes, they stopped me to pick up from airport and drop off. Yes, I'm working. That's my full-time job. I don't have any other job because that way, if I don't work, I don't drop to airport, I don't make money. That's my message to try to let people know. Because the Uber they don't do nothing to us. If we go to office, they don't help us. That's my message. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Rick Hooper, Destin, and then Kelsey Mesher, and then after that, Ahmed Mumin.
Great, slight detour into another SDOT issue. I'm Rick Hooper, president of Uptown Alliance, but I'm delighted to be here today to speak on behalf of a much larger and growing coalition of diverse organizations supporting the newly updated and much more robust Thomas Street Greenway plan. Thomas Street Greenway is an old but recently rescued plan and brought to significant new life thanks to critically needed efforts by Councilmember Bagshaw. Focused on a critical potential pedestrian, biking, link to transit corridor connecting with Seattle Center, a regional asset. Huge thanks also to SDOT and Seattle Center staff. Coming together around this much better plan took some intense creative energy and visioning, but our collective work has been so successful over the last 3 months that we're now ready for a critical look at budget issues. Urgent need and opportunity. We have several nearby and adjacent developers rapidly planning new projects and ready to contribute. Here's our support letter. We are still adding signatures. As our coalition grows, we'll be providing that information over the next 2 weeks. We're eager and anxious to help support a budget amendment. Let's make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Destin Lambro, Kelsey, Ahmed, and then Abdi.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your work on this budget and particularly for your intention to all of these details related to TNCs. I'm here today in my capacity as president of the King County Labor Council because MLK Labor is one of the earliest coalition partners as part of the Fair Share Coalition. And in just a few short weeks since the mayor announced the Fair Share plan, over 60 organizations have signed on to this particular plan, as you heard today from the central staff. It's incredibly diverse. It includes MLK Labor, Transportation Choices Coalition, the King County Democrats, One America, the Seattle Building Trades, and countless others. Well, more than 60. So we're incredibly proud of that. We feel very good about the momentum that we've built in just a few short weeks since the mayor announced this plan, and feel really good about passing this in November, and look forward to working with you all as we implement this. But thank you so much for all of your work on it, and let's get to work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Kelsey, Ahmed, and then Abdi. Welcome, Kelsey.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelsey Mesher. I'm here speaking on behalf of Transportation Choices Coalition. I think many of you know we advocate for more transportation choices and think a lot about how our system works. And I think it's fair to say we have some reservations about how big companies like Uber and Lyft are impacting our system, but I'm here today to say we have absolutely no reservations about standing with our labor partners to stand up for better protections for drivers and for a path for them to make a living wage. These are the people working in our transportation system who are giving us rides and keeping us safe. It's very important that they are treated with dignity and earning and a living wage. I also want to say that this legislation does a lot more than that. It also is going to help us address some of our urgent issues around mobility and affordability by funding our streetcar project, which is going to carry 20,000 people per day, providing transportation, and also providing critical funding for building affordable housing near transit. So working families will be able to have the option to not have a car and that cost if they want to, and be able to access jobs, opportunity, and schools. So I stand with the Fair Share Coalition. Thank you.
Thanks. So we have Ahmed, and then Abdi, and then Julie Davis.
Madam Chair, President of Council, member of the councils, good afternoon. My name is Abdi Shire, representative of Seattle Rideshare Driver Association. We are proposing that the the legislation we are here today, suggestion of the Driver Resource Center is a cure is better than prevention. That legislation of we are proposing that a Driver Solidarity Resource Center, which could provide the membership training for the drivers, voter registration, family assistance, and this center is run by the drivers democratically, and we're asking for the money which has been collecting to be given the drivers. We know that most of our drivers, they came from taxi and limousine service, and they lost their investment. So if any funding being collected, we're asking as legislators, please, to be the driver has to be beneficiary, not outsourcing from various entities and not duplicate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also, one more addition, please, we would like to request the City Council in future for the legislation on Friday. It's one of the public Muslim holidays. There are more drivers who might be here today, like to testify like us, we get a chance. If we could avoid that, and thank you, Mr. President. The last time, even was holiday, was TNC, Mr. President has to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have Abdi, then Julie Davis, then Ismail.
I'm Julie Davis.
Okay, before you get going, do we have Abdi?
Abdi, I'm going to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I was one behind. Sorry. Julie, I apologize. So then we have Ismail, and then we have Nicole Grant and Katie Garrell.
So my name is Julie Davis. I've been a driver for over 2.5 years. A 4.96 on Uber, 5-star on Lyft. I'm here on behalf of the Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association. I work with some of the brothers here. What we really need, as people have been saying, is a driver's resource and solidarity center. What we need that for is we need it to be run by the drivers, for the drivers, because Uber and Lyft, you're a number and a commodity. If you go to them with a problem, you're not getting any resources, any help. They have no answers for us. So if we can get this, we can have some of the necessary things. When we get in an accident, we can't afford to have another vehicle. We don't have the resources. If we don't have a car, we don't work, we don't make money, we lose our rent. I'm stuck in a situation where I can't afford to move, but the rising costs of District 5 and everything else that's happening upon it, I'm stuck. So these are situations like myself could be beneficial for, and some of the other brothers as well. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have training for the drivers and to get over some of the language barriers that they have through being from the different countries and everything else. I feel a little nervous.
You're doing great.
But yeah, so if we could get just a solidarity and resource center that's run by the drivers democratically, that would be beneficial instead of having all these people who don't understand what it's like to be a driver.
Thank you. Ismail, I've got one ahead of you. Ismail, number 16, Awadella. No, Ismail, if you're here, would you raise your hand just so I can see you? Okay, I don't see anybody by that name or responding, so Nicole and Katie, thank you for being here. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a bunch of them up here, and so we've got...
We'll look it up there in a second.
We'll get it, and there's still a few people, few spaces for people to sign up on that one. Thank you. All right, well, welcome, Nicole. Katie, good to see you again.
Thank you, Council President Harrell, Council members. Nicole Grant from MLK Labor, and I am standing here proudly with my brothers and sisters who are rideshare drivers. We're part of a coalition of 60+ organizations that believe that workers' rights and a collective voice need to be on the table for Uber drivers. And we think that the policy that you guys are looking at right now is the way to do it. It's good for the drivers. It is good for all workers in our city who need transit-adjacent housing, and it is good for our transportation system globally. So thank you for your support. And this is Katie.
Hi. My message is really directed at the drivers. I want to say thank you for standing up today. You all are joining a rich and historic tradition in the union movement of demanding a fair return on your work. And I want you to know that you are not alone. In the union movement, we talk about the tradition of solidarity. And solidarity means that you will never fight alone again.
Okay, Mr. Van Dyke, Anna Zyvarts, and it looks like Aaron Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Chris Van Dyke. I'm Chairman, President, CEO of Netcar Technology Corporation. I've been involved in the taxi industry for 12 years or more. City policy over the last 5 years has decimated the incomes and savings of for-hire drivers, taxi, for-hire, TNC. Now the city wants to take the passenger fares these drivers earn to fund what? Streetcars? Housing? This proposal does not help driver income. This proposal does not regulate Uber or Lyft. It's voluntary. The only voluntary thing Uber and Lyft have done, I've been around since they've been around, is drive driver income into the ground. If the proposal, that's why I say this, if the proposal before you does anything other than put cash money directly into for-hire drivers' pockets, my company, Netcar, we will sponsor an initiative to repeal it. Patterned after Initiative 91, which was the successful challenge to money for the Sonics and those billionaires, the Fair Share Initiative will repeal the ordinance, restrict use of any tax on for-hire rates to the offsetting of for-hire vehicle driver operational expense and nothing else. Require the city to set minimum for-hire passenger rates at no less than 3 times the IRS allowed expense deduction for mileage. That would be about $1.74 per mile plus wait time. The city's hijacking of income for for-hire drivers is fundamentally wrong. Has the city of Seattle no shame? You're not going to raise driver income. It's going to stay down here, but you're taking the money. That is wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dyke. Anna, and then Aaron Henderson, and then Jesse Moore. Looks like Jesse has a group.
Anna Zyvarts, I'm the program director of Rooted in Rights from Disability Rights Washington, and we are part of the Fair Share Coalition. We support the proposal. And I want to talk about something that's been happening lately among disability groups. I want to be clear that the TNCs are trying to pit the disability community against our labor and community allies. And we are not going to stand for that. They're lying about the support they have from the disability community. I'm a member of a national blind organization that does not support Lyft, and yet Lyft has been saying that they have the group support opposing the TNC tax. Our community is frustrated that the TNCs do not provide wheelchair-accessible vehicles with Uber or Lyft service in Seattle. And so we will be standing with our labor and community allies to fight for a transportation system that serves our community. And I just want to be clear that we need to stand up and be clear with Lyft and Uber that they can't try to pit our community against labor allies. Also, while I'm up here, I just want to speak very quickly in support of 2 other pieces of the budget that you were considering today in favor of the funding for the connection for the Duwamish Longhouse. I've tried crossing Marginal Way there as a pedestrian. It's terrifying, and it's appalling that that gap in our transportation system exists. And also in support of funding for the transportation equity agenda and the work group. I think it's critical that we rethink the way we have committees and boards in our city and make sure they are representative of our city and not people who have time to volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Anna. Aaron Henderson, and after Aaron is Jesse, and then Dennis Lewis. Hi.
Hi, I'm Aaron Henderson.
I own my own company. I don't work for Uber. I contract with Uber. And I love the idea behind what this is trying to do. I just think the implementation of it is completely wrong. I believe that taking the money for public transit and putting it into public transit is going to produce less riders for Uber and Lyft, thereby decreasing the actual income that drivers are making. I think we are looking at this short-sighted, and we need to look a little more long-term at it. I love what it's trying to do. I just don't think the implementation of it or how it's being done is correct. I make plenty of money to live. I pay for my car, I pay for my rent. My daughter and I are gonna go see the Cinderella opera this Sunday. So if I'm making less than minimum wage, how am I doing those things? I make plenty of money. I will not qualify for any of the affordable housing that you guys are suggesting because I wouldn't be in that category. And I think it needs to be rethought at how this is going to be done. And then I might be able to sign up for it. But I definitely think that we need to take a step back and relook at what we're trying to do as opposed to just rushing forward and saying, yes, let's help drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got three now. Jesse Moore, and do you want to put 5 minutes up there for them? Thank you. And if you can do it faster than 5 minutes, that's fine too.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Jesse Moore with Duwamish Valley Safe Streets, and I'm joined by Bob Winship from West Seattle Bike Connections and Dr. Jeffrey Perkins, consultant to the Duwamish Tribe. And we are here to support members of the Duwamish Tribe who are requesting $2 million in funding from the City of Seattle for the Duwamish Longhouse Safe Street and Accessibility Project. The Longhouse opened in 2009 and is the cultural center for Indigenous people of the Puget Salish region. Public community events often use both the Longhouse and the two parks, Herring's House and T107, directly across West Marginal Way Southwest. The T107 Park is on the National Register of Historic Places and is a major archaeological site of great importance to the Duwamish Tribe. The Longhouse has limited parking and is not served by transit, so people driving to events park across the street at the park's parking lots, while others come by bicycle using the Duwamish Trail. It is not safe for people to walk between the parks, the parking lot, the trail, and the Longhouse. And crossing here poses an even bigger obstacle for people with mobility challenges. It can feel really scary, like you're trying to walk across a highway like I-5, where drivers don't expect to encounter people. West Marginal has 5 lanes, heavy trucks, and traffic speeds regularly exceed 50 miles per hour. The Duwamish Tribe applied to the Neighborhood Street Fund in 2018 to address this problem, and it was supported by a strong majority of voters in District 1 and 2 and 12 community groups. Unfortunately, the project exceeded the limits set by NSF and couldn't be funded by that program. Thankfully, though, the Department of Transportation has taken the initiative to create a design concept and a cost estimate to build a safe and accessible crossing between the Longhouse and Assets on the east side of the street. And this design would also create a safe bus loading and a parking area in front of the Longhouse and help to reduce traffic speeds. SDOT staff estimates, to my knowledge, the cost at $2 million, including contingencies. The great news is now there's a $2 million solution to this 10-year-old problem. And all that is needed for that solution to succeed is to place the necessary funding for this project in the city's 2020 budget. And I hope that you believe, as I do, that this is the right thing to do. And it also seems like one simple way to show thanks to the people that gave our city both its name and the land that it is built on. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'm Bob Winship with West Seattle Bike Connections. We're one of the 12 neighborhood organizations that support this request for funding. Among our activities is an annual ride to historical sites in West Seattle in cooperation with the Southwest Seattle Historical Society. This year's ride visited community gathering places, and we hope to include the Duwamish Longhouse. Although there are no bus connections, it is easily accessible by bicycle from the West Duwamish Trail, or at least it should be. However, as Jesse explained, the lack of a protected crossing, a busy, wide West Marginal Way made this too dangerous for a large group, including young, inexperienced cyclists. We reluctantly dropped the Longhouse from our tour. This is just one example of the problems that this project would help overcome. It would make the Longhouse more accessible to everyone, a goal that is shared by all surrounding communities, as is clear from the wide range of supporting organizations and the NSF voting earlier this year. I urge you to include funding in this year's budget. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Perkins. I've been with the Duwamish for the last couple of years, and I'm just here to reinforce what I said the last time. King County Councilman Joe McDermott has mandated that the Duwamish Longhouse is a regional asset. I hold in my hand right here money they get from all over the world, people who have visited them. This just so happened to be $3,000 in Tanzanian money. Huh. Of course, they sold some pictures because the kids wanted some pictures of the chief, and they couldn't have really afford it. We just went on and accepted this. Maybe one day if I go to Tanzania, I'll be a rich man. But anyway, we need to support this because only in Perugia, Italy, the sister city of Seattle, is there a fin, a 28-foot fin by the late Marvin Oliver, a sculptor at the University of Washington, Native American, who passed just recently. That fin is on the soil of Perugia. It's the only Native American soil from Seattle to Perugia. And last December, a peace pole now hangs in front of the Perugia market along with the fin, and there's a peace pole in front of the Duwamish Longhouse that was put together by a group of people here on Mercer Island. So anyway, we need to support this initiative because they have over 50,000 people have visited there under these unsafe conditions. School kids come from everywhere. People from all over the world continue to come to the Duwamish Longhouse. They are Chief Seattle people. They have been here since the glacial ice age. It's in their folklore and everywhere. And we stand for the Duwamish as a people.
Thank you. Thank you three for coming down. Dennis Lewis, Del Patterson, and Eric Maloney.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Lewis. Been a Uber driver for nearly 5 years. I wouldn't even have a job because I was disabled, and it gave me off disability. So I'd like to applaud the ride shares for doing that for me, at least. This thing has really got me torn. I came in and I heard all the arguments on both sides. But anything that can benefit our drivers in the city of Seattle, I'm all for. But I really want to come in and give my 2 cents because I could be out there making money right now. It cost me $44 to park today.
Oh, wow.
This is it's a lot of money for us drivers. So, but hopefully that with this 51 cents per ride is enough. Is there any guarantees it's going to stay at 51 cents per ride? Our riders don't even get a say-so in this. I wish they would have a say-so. But that's what I came here today. I give my little 2 cents as just an ordinary Joe. All us ordinary Joes out there, we must have a voice in all these debates. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming, Dennis. Del Patterson, Eric Maloney, and Nico Winoto.
I'm Del Patterson, and I wear 2 caps here. I received a call late last night from someone saying they were Uber. I know enough. Uber's never called me before. They asked me to come and testify here again. I've testified twice before. I'll start first with the professional capacity. I'm a social scientist, human geographer at the University of Washington, and I collect data.
I'm sorry, can you just speak into the microphone so we can all hear you? Thank you.
Okay. I collect data. I started with Uber here. Uber, like I said, Uber doesn't call anybody. Everything's done inside this app. I carry 2 telephones on me. I'm required to, one for collecting data, the other one for personal use. In Uber's app, Uber asks us certain questions. This is before they sold the company for $90 billion. Okay, things are changed now, I've noticed. I've been shut down for a month without pay. I had personal attorneys that I had to call, and even my personal attorneys quit on me. They didn't want to go up against Uber. Now, that's my personal story here first. And like I said, I collect data in pro-Uber. And Uber asked me, all of what I've heard here has been good, very valid, everything. One of the questions that I was asked when I started driving with Uber was why I drive for Uber. And I wrote, this is on my Uber profile.
Dale, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please. Can you just give us your last sentence?
Okay, my last sentence here is the drivers shouldn't be punished here in Seattle for providing a service that Seattle needs.
Thank you. Thank you. Then we've got Eric Maloney, and then Nico Winoto.
Awadallah?
Are you Eric?
Yeah, Ishmael Awadallah.
I'm Eric Maloney.
I'm sorry. And do you have a number?
Yeah.
Oh,
called me,
you were one of the people that I called.
I think he was earlier.
And you're Ishmael?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's let this gentleman speak, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Maloney. I'm a full-time Lyft driver. I've given more than 9,000 rides, enjoy a 5.00 rating with a 67% utilization and a 100% acceptance rate. Earlier this year, Lyft completed a comprehensive economic impact study, which, among other things, told us that more than half of our passengers in the city of Seattle earn less than $50,000 a year. That's the working poor. I'm the working poor. Every day I'm driving my people. Low-income workers to and from their jobs, baristas, fast food workers, cooks, nannies, retail workers. They can't afford a car. They can't afford to rely on our public transportation, which doesn't have much overnight service and isn't particularly reliable. The mayor kept asking a couple weeks ago, who doesn't have 2 quarters? They don't have 2 quarters. If they commute every day to and from work 6 days a week, that's $300 a year. Every day I drive these same people and other folks in their same tax bracket, the elderly, the disabled, to the emergency room because they cannot afford $300 for an ambulance. If they don't have that $300, how do they have this $300? Given that, it stands to reason that this tax is misguided, regressive, unfair, and is picking on the people who can least afford it, the hardworking people of Seattle who make this city the great place that it is. Please don't pick on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ishmael, please go ahead, and then we have.
My name is Ishmael Awadallah. I'm driving Uber.
I'm sorry, can you just hold for just a second? We're having a little difficulty here. We've got Nico, it's number 25, and Cristino Hernandez. Very good, thank you. You are number 26, so if you'll please step up to a microphone, you'll be third. Please, now, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. All right. My name is Ishmael Awadallah. I'm driving Uber 2017. They shut down my app in 2017. I go office many times. They didn't open to me. I been rented $700, too expensive. I buy this car, new car. They shut me down app. And then I take care of my mom passed away. I take care of my brother, my young brother. And my daddy is old guy, overnight. Also, I take care of him. I don't have any income. They showed me my app from no reason. I don't know what happened. That's why I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were concluding. Did you have something else?
Okay. I'm saying like, I do like so much income. My house so expensive. And then like, is my dad, my mother is passed away. I have my brother is young. I take care of him. Is my income I do into an Uber. Is Uber like shut down my app from no reason. I'm asking a couple of times. They didn't tell me why they shut down my app. And then like I buy also, I want to drive to Uber. They didn't tell me any reason. I lose a lot of things. My income is from reason from Uber. Yeah.
Nico?
Go. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cristiano, go next. And then Julie Davis has already spoken, so I'll take you off. And Steve Kovic. Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Please,
you.
Go ahead.
Your Excellency, Council Member, my name is Nico. I am driving for Lyft and Uber both for about since 2015. And then I'm sorry about my language because I have a problem with my mouth.
We can hear you very well.
Yeah, and I'm thankful about what the platform I use until now, you know. I don't get welfare from the government, you know. I think I'm good enough. Just if you increase the tax, I believe I'm gonna get more less rider, because last time I spoke with one of the, I think she's working in this building, and then she say if she have to pay more, and then she willing to drive because he used Lyft and Uber because he don't want to pay the parking, you know, and then the traffic. So this is my concern. And then about the gap for the how much minimum wage, you know, as an independent contractor, I don't need the gap, you know. If you put the gap, you see that in New York, $17.50, and then last driver, they cannot work because they put schedule on that. Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Nico. Cristiano, and then Steve Lovett, and then a name that is, I cannot read, number 29. Potentially Jeffrey Runu. All right, please go ahead, and we'll work this out.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Cristiano Hernandez Sandoval, and I'm a Lyft driver. I'm a 5-star rating with nearly 2,500 rides, and it's my full-time gig as of August of last year. I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and within that amount of time, I've grown and matured greatly in that time. A lot of it I owe to the rideshare industry. And because of this platform and opportunity, I've been able to manage my own business, set my own hours, and take care of what I need to do, like bills and such. But most importantly, I've also been able to develop a lot of essential skills through this opportunity. Now, I love working with people, and I love providing a service to the community and continuing to exercise my personal skills. And rideshare is a great thing for the city of Seattle, being able to provide a lot of transportation and stuff, providing people from point A to point B around the city, whether it's be to Ballard, to downtown, or wherever. At night, I'm able to get folks home safely, and people who are out and about, especially who are out coming from the bars at nighttime. During the fall and winter time, my rides go up between various business trips coming into town. I work hard, and I know that I'm doing a good work. Helping residents get from point A to point B in a more dependable, comfortable, and affordable manner, which brings me to my conclusion. The 75-cent tax will have a great impact on the community that the mayor is taking into consideration, and with her proposal. My earnings should not be jeopardized by the projects that aren't factoring our thoughts as drivers and feelings as a rideshare driver and as me, your constituent. So with that being said, I do feel like we need to take a step back, and thank you for hearing my testimonial and validity of this proposal.
Thank you. Cristiano, thank you for your words, and I think Councilmember Herbold has a question.
A quick question for us to consider is whether or not we can make available the elasticity study, because I'm hearing people really concerned that this is going to come out of their pockets.
Right.
And if we have reassurances that it will not, I'd like to share that with folks.
Fine by me. And it was part of the public documents this morning, so I think it's a fine idea.
It already has been published.
I don't know that it has, but we saw it this morning, so I would assume that if it's not up today, that it will be up by Monday.
Karina, has it been published? So it has not been published.
But it would be, and certainly could be, because there was nothing confidential on it. Okay. Well, I think we should make the information available. So if we could, maybe we could just get some copies of that. Would that make sense today, like now?
Thank you, Karina.
All right, thank you. So what we're talking about up here is this morning we were given some information that showed, based upon modeling, if the tax was raised a certain amount, what the impact in the dollars would be, and then at I think it was 20 cents increments. And we were pleasantly surprised to see that the modeling suggests that the number of riders will be very reduced in only a very small way, even if we went up to the highest number proposed or considered. So we'll get that for you and just give you some copies here and let you take a look at it. And it was preliminary data, but I think it's worthy to share it with you now. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're here. And Steve, then after Steve, there is a name that I cannot read, but my best guess for the last name is P-U-H-U. And then the next one looks like maybe it's Clement. We're going to start having awards for the worst handwriting and the best handwriting. So, Steve, please. We're well. How are you?
My name is Steve Lovett. I've been a Lyft driver for 3 years, primarily part-time. I'm semi-retired, though my kids aren't so sure of that. I got into Lyft because I work at home, and my daughter encouraged me that she said I need to get away from my computer doing my work and get out and about through the community. And it's been actually a very positive venture, we'll put it that way. As a former public servant myself, I've been able to take those experiences, and I truly have enjoyed the Lyft. I've enjoyed the flexibility it gives me, and actually I make pretty good money doing it, quite frankly. I've never been disappointed in Lyft personally, and I do quite well at it. One thing I feel that is lost in these discussions is the passengers. I picked up people in wheelchairs, service animals, bikes. A girl got hurt going home, picked her up on her bike. I've taken elderly people to the grocery store, so on this tax, they're going to hit twice. One's going to the store, one's heading back. I took a lot of people between jobs where they can't get the public transportation in time to get where they're going. And just a couple quick things. I have a friend who lives in Bellevue. He lives in subsidized housing. He works in Capitol Hill. He cannot get a bus back. And he depends on them to get them home at a cost thing. And I talk to other passengers that don't like to go to 3rd Avenue, wait for a bus, or people don't like to ride the light rail up and see in that university station up there because it's not safe. So that being said, I think that the tax that you're proposing is part of this. I'm all for doing something to help drivers out, but like I said, as a former public servant, I don't think I would have ever pushed forth a resolution or anything to tax something to finance something else, like we're proposing for the link or for the streetcar and the housing. If anything's going to be done, it needs to be helping the drivers and not spent on other projects.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, so the last name.
Yes.
That's it. You're in. And yeah, you did well.
My first name is Haley.
It's what?
Haley.
There's
so close.
There's a Haley in that? Okay. All right.
Haley. Printed my name.
See any part of Haley in that?
All right. Hello, members of the City Council. Thank you for hearing my testimony today. My name is Haley Pune, and I am a full-time Lyft driver with over 6,700 rides. So I do this full-time as I'm studying online marketing and my real estate license to be a business broker. So I have plans to not do this forever. But to put it bluntly, if you put this tax and the passenger has to pay up to 75 cents more, it is going to be very, very problematic in a lot of different ways. I hear all the time people will not go to that zone or wait till the prime time hours are done before they get rides. They'll check Uber, they'll check Lyft. They're already trying to figure out how cheap they can get from A to B. And so if that tax is imposed, I expect that people are going to hesitate. And that hesitation will end up being that there's going to be a lot less drivers or a lot less passengers. Plus, it's hurting the driver from the less rides that could happen. Plus, if you hadn't noticed, the gas has gone up twice in the last 2 weeks that I've seen. And so our incomes are going to be gravely affected by the internal aspects of gas increases, plus the less rides from this tax increase. So I encourage you, please do not pass this tax because it is not going to be in the best benefit for all of us drivers and passengers altogether. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next person that signed up is number 30. My guess here is that it's Clement Gonig. All right, I'm going to move on, and if somebody is at the end and says that we didn't call on you, then you can let me know. Rick Browning and Abakar, and then we have Teresa Bowman. Hello.
Hi. Good afternoon, council members. Thanks for all your work on the budget. I'm Rick Browning, local architect and chair of the Uptown Alliance. That's the Uptown Neighborhood Group Transportation Committee. So I'm not here to talk about TNC, although that's of interest to our community for sure. Rather, I'm speaking in support of the Thomas Street Greenway project. And Councilmember Bagshaw has said not to repeat information, but I am going to repeat the thanks we heard earlier to Councilmember Bagshaw for helping with this. I think some other council members are aware of the project as well. Just want to briefly state this is not a neighborhood project. This is not a connector between two neighborhoods, South Lake Union and Uptown. It is a project of regional, maybe even national significance. Insofar as we have a Central Park in Seattle, it is the Seattle Center. This project is a gateway to the Seattle Center, and it is designed in a way to provide mode equity for bikes and pedestrians. As Mercer is a very car-centric, busy, and sort of scary place, this could be a community gathering place and a place for modes to access the center, and really a landmark project for Seattle. So I encourage you to provide the funding SDOT needs to complete the segment between the Seattle Center and Dexter. Whatever that amount is, they've been squishy on it.
Good.
But thank you. Thank you for considering this.
Rick, thanks for coming, and also thanks for your work on the design charrette. That was really great effort. Abakar?
Yes, please.
Very good. And then Teresa Bowman and Michael Bowman.
Councilmember, I have a copy of my testimony if you guys want to keep a copy.
Yes,
that way you can consider us better. Greetings and peace and harmony. My name is Bob. I go by Bob, short. People blabber over my name. And I've been working for Lyft, with Lyft for over 2 years now. But to become a full-time driver, that happened just over three months ago. Before that, I was a program coordinator with a developmental disability company contracted. But I was tired of the bureaucracy, and I thought I could make it better with Lyft. And I'm happy here, to be honest with you. All I want to let you know is that all eyes on Seattle, from the moment Seattle was Seattle until now that we're changing the name to Tech City Seattle, it's been about the greens, and you know how many things are green. You'll all agree with me, there is only one color that the eye sees most. The eye sees most. Anybody know? Green. You know why? Because it is our food source, and the eye looks for food first. That means the color of money is green, peace is green, education is green. Can I go on? The taxes you're putting on the drivers or the ride share or the passengers, we're having it hard already. Whatever you're doing to look out for the driver, we appreciate it. I can say it blatantly. We appreciate all that you're doing, but putting more money. I talk to the rideshare customers all the time. They don't want to pay more money. Usually they will pay higher Lyft. They will take Lyft. But now you see more rideshares. Is that the benefit of the driver or not? I don't know. But I understand that money is hard to come by, and man don't live by bread alone.
Great.
I appreciate you. Thank you for this time. And I hope you can listen to the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have Teresa, Michael, and then Peter.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Teresa Bowman, and as I'm listening to the proposed legislation, I'm realizing there's a lot of gaps in understanding and operations, compensation, as well as just resolution. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear both sides. And I just wanted to share my experience, and I'm in opposition to the tax, and I agree and echo with a lot of the drivers here are saying. So I drive Lyft part-time, maybe 10 to 20 hours a week, and my average is, on the low end, my low average is about $20 to $23, high end $35 to $40 an hour. And so with the higher taxation, that's going to reduce the demand. And I, as being a previous business owner, owning a cafe and seeing how things are going now with just property taxes, business occupation taxes, I know that customers, or even me myself as a consumer, if there's more taxation, I spend less. There's less disposable income. And so if that's going to happen with ride shares, I feel that's going to happen as well. We know that there's a lot of business owners that are leaving Seattle, a lot of people that are moving out of Seattle just to avoid that taxation, just because it's hard to have a decent living. Like, there's a lot of people that drive from outside the city to make a living here, and it just makes it, it's going to just make it extremely difficult. And so I thank you for hearing us out, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming, Teresa and Michael, and then Peter, and then I think we already had Lata. He spoke in the first group, so please go ahead.
Okay, I want to thank you very much for your time today, City Council. Michael Bowman here. I've been a Lyft driver for about 4 years, off and on, part-time, and I'm here to kind of represent, as a business owner, I have multiple businesses, and see Lyft as another form of a business that I can definitely leverage, and I understand pay for performance. I've enjoyed the opportunity that Lyft has provided, the flexibility that it offers in being able to run multiple businesses. I routinely make, on the low end, $20 an hour, and routinely up to about $40. There have been times that I've made $80 an hour, and that's just based on taking advantage of those opportunities that Lyft has provided. I do believe that a tax on passengers will negatively impact both passengers and drivers. Definitely, Lyft drivers do earn money based on tips, so I understand the performance side of that, and I do believe that if passengers are charged more, that those tips will also maybe not go out quite as frequently to drivers, and that is it's a great way to make extra income on a per-hour basis. I've made up to $15 an hour in just tips alone. So with that, I believe a tax increase will negatively impact both passengers and drivers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Peter is Kuel.
Yeah,
and then
thank
after
you very much. My name is Peter Kuel.
Okay, hold on just a second, please. It looks like Sharmarki. Good. If you'll come on up, you'll be number 2, and then Muhammad Ali. Good. Please go ahead, Peter. Yes.
Okay. My name is Peter Kuel. I've been driving for Lyft and Uber for over 5 years. I pick up 35,000 people. And there was a time also I took a gap. I support the fair share rise 100% with no doubt. Uber is not your friend. If you think that Uber is working for you, it's not working for you. Know that from the time that you started, it was $2.70 per mile, and now it's $1.11. That is not, Uber is not for you. The only thing we need as a driver, we need to unite, stay together as strong. In terms of driver being tagged, it's an issue. It's not an issue. Uber take $1.50 per insurance, which you don't benefit nothing at all. Who among you can tell me got an accident and Uber fit? None. $1.50 they go free for Uber. Why will it be a problem for 51 cents that go to our city, that build the road, that build the housing, that serve the life of drivers that being harassed all the time? We need the safety of drivers. Drivers have been deactivated for no reason. I've been deactivated 5 times and put back again after long talking discussion. Uber now, they put me out for 1 year. October last year to October this year, I'm out of Uber. For somebody that hate me, I cannot invite somebody to hate me. But they took me out of business for somebody that hate my car. I'm victim from them, from my cab, my for hire, and I'm victim from person who hate me. And again, right now they took me out of business. We need the city of Seattle, please. We've been here several times, pass the law, let it be the first legal city in the United States of America.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
And do we have a Muhammad Ali here?
My name?
I've got
Shamarkia.
Shamarkia.
Yeah.
Good. And then Mohammed. Are you Mohammed?
No. My name is Sukhchain Banvat.
Do you know what number you were when you signed up?
No, it was right here. Just
Do you sign the letter? Do you sign the letter?
I signed it. Not this one.
Then you wait for.
Oh, okay, it's still here, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, so if there's not a Muhammad Ali after you, then, oh dear, there's somebody who lives on 155th Street with a 425 phone number. Okay, and then next after that is Eric Palmer. So please, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Sharmake Godir. I was supporting Teamsters last 4 years, and they don't do nothing about it. And because a lot of people, employee work in Port of Seattle, every day they fire and they are union. So I'm quit for Teamsters. I support for Seattle Driver Association, and we fight for our rights, and we keep for just moving forward to fight our rights. So last 3 years I've been here, support for Teamsters, and I'm quit for. I'm a Seattle Driver Association, and we have a largest number, almost like 375 drivers, us, and we have the Uber, they can't do nothing about it because they can't do nothing about Uber. So if I support for Teamsters and Uber, I support for Uber because I don't want to pay for nonsense money, $50 every month, and they can't do nothing about it. Believe me, they can't do nothing about it. So guys, don't waste your time. Just support us drivers, us, and raise the money. We know Seattle expensive, fuel, everything. So I'm a driver.
Thank you.
Rideshare association. I'm not no more Teamsters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So would you tell me your name?
Eric Palmer.
Okay, so is there anybody here that 3607 Northeast 155th? Oh. Yes. Okay, good. So you will come after Mr. Palmer. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I've been an Uber and Lyft driver for over 5 years. I have over 28,000 rides. I typically run between a 4.95 average and a 5.0 average. I talk to each of my customers. I've been to the Lyft meetings, and I receive emails from Drive Forward. Drive Forward is owned by Uber, run by Uber, and managed by Uber. Lyft is doing the same thing. They're both advocating, saying that the tax is going to affect the drivers. They're pushing this hard. If they really think something's going to affect the drivers, when they took the surge pay away from all the drivers, but they continued charging our customers, that's what cost us customers. When our rides go from $5 up to $25 for the same ride, that's what affects our ridership. That's what affects our tips. When they lowered our rates down, that's what affects our pocketbook. It needs to be regulated. We let Uber and Lyft come in here unregulated. They've lowered the fares, they've lowered the pay. They are not regulated at all, and they don't care about the drivers. This bill is pro-drivers. I run the IDA, which has been created in order to create benefits for independent contractors. And we are in the process of creating our own rideshare app, which will be run properly. We believe that $1.75 per mile and 50 cents per minute with no surges would benefit drivers far better than anything else and put regulations on it to where these companies cannot charge the surges if they're not going to pay it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric. All right, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, you're up, and then we've got, I think somebody that's already spoken. Uba Daran. Hold just a moment, please. Sorry. I think that he was one of them that was signed up earlier. Okay. I think we're getting close to that last page. Thank you. And then after is Clara Cantor and Jordan Penny. Please.
Okay. Hi, this is Toussaint Jackson. I went to another council meeting in Berrien
I believe it was 2 months ago. It was about the carnival and the circus coming back, because back in the day when they were really here, it helped the economy. And I think it should merge with barnyards, because if you do, there's tax write-offs and people can get their food cut and diced up and properly cooked, and it'll help people. And also, you know, the circus could come with the football, and you do a mixture, and you scout people out like boxing gyms, because I've been at a boxing gym 3 or 4 years, and they have talent, and they have people who look certain ways who aren't bodybuilders and stuff. They can help migrate stuff if you put them in cornfields, cemeteries, barnyards, deserts, stuff like that, and make it a circus atmosphere. There's different elements of the circus and carnival, and you sprinkle a little evilness on it, like Halloween, Valentine's Day, all these holidays, you mix them up together, and you can help them, and there's tax write-offs and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stuff with the carnival, like rides and stuff like that, and festivals and stuff like that, and it can help the economy. People can take planes more, and there's a lot of tax write-offs, and it could just be better for everyone. It's a complex situation, but carnivals and circuses back in the day, when they were in towns and cities a lot of times, and there were different elements of it, it made a lot of difference for jobs, and you know, there was tax write-offs and people had more money in their pocket, and I think we could progress from that and we can build towards the future. Thank you.
So, like 10 minutes, maybe I'll give you a call. Thank you very much. Clara Cantor, is Clara still here? Oh, there you are. I know, I saw you come in. And then Jordan Penny.
Hi, my name is Clara Cantor. I'm a community organizer for Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, and I'm also here to speak on behalf of the MASS Coalition, Move All Seattle Sustainably. We, as a coalition, believe that every person in Seattle should be able to get around where they need to go safely and conveniently by walking, rolling, biking, or taking transit. And we also believe that our city's transportation budget should embody our climate and our equity goals, rather than upholding the status quo. So first of all, I'd just like to thank the council members for their support of MASS Coalition's transportation package thus far, and also particularly voice my support for the entirety of the MASS Coalition transportation package that hasn't been brought forward in the budget session so far, and the budget priorities that come with that package. I also wanted to speak particularly about a couple of the projects. One, the Georgetown South Park Trail, connecting from Georgetown to South Park. These two communities share a lot of resources, and right now it's really dangerous and difficult to get between the two of them. The Beacon Avenue Trail, the Safe Routes to School budget asks, including the active transportation coordinator to help kids get safely to and from school, and also to restore the traffic camera funding that was previously allocated to Safe Routes to School and then siphoned off in the budget last year, and ensure that that type of thing doesn't happen again. And then also speak on behalf of the Home Zone Pilot, which is creating safe places for people to walk in neighborhoods that currently don't have sidewalks or other places for people to be. So thank you for those of you who've supported those projects, and I'm out of time. I also wanted to say the Thomas Street Neighborhood Greenway and the Duwamish Longhouse Crossing, which you've heard about before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Glad you're here. All right, so we are moving on to Jordan Penny. Jordan, are you here? Good. And then I'm going to start on number 51, and it looks to me like there may be some duplicated names, so we'll work that out as we get there.
Hi, good afternoon. So I've been an Uber driver for just a little bit over 7.5 months, a Lyft driver for about 3.5 months. I'm a diamond driver with Uber. Currently, I'm not working with Lyft due to the fact that someone who was uninsured hit me back in August, the day after my 27th birthday. He hit my 2019 Buick that I bought personally for Uber and Lyft. He was uninsured, and Lyft went ahead. They said that they wouldn't be able to cover anything, nor did my insurance. I was left with a $2,500 deductible because some idiot driver who wasn't supposed to be on the road got fined $500 for hitting me. Now, I understand that, yeah, there is a lot of taxes and stuff that are being posted up for, being taken out of either our pockets or your customers. It hasn't been clear. You all say it's going to be from the drivers or from the company itself, but it still scares us because, like me, Uber is a full-time job. I have rent, I have bills, I have all kinds of stuff I have to take care of. I also pay $224 a week for a rental vehicle that is provided by fare through the Uber app. I was given one choice of, which platform I wanted to use. I chose to use Uber. I have better rapport with them, better record with them, so I continue to use them. I noticed that there used to be, these surge rides and all these upgraded, little promotional things. I don't know if any of, the rest of you all have been noticing it, but Uber sits there, they have a lot of hacks and glitches and stuff that provide us to not be able to access those. And with all these jobs, that we're supposed to be having, we're getting scared because everything's, being risen for the customers, decreasing our riding and decreasing the income that comes at our place. We can't afford, our places. We work 24/7, 7 days a week because we feel like we're trapped. We can't actually go out and live a life. We have to dedicate ourselves working 12+ hours a day just to make ends meet. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for coming. So I'm going to read a phone number here, 229-3533. Okay, very good. We've got, and would you pronounce your name for me?
Sukhchain Banwat.
Sukhchain, thank you. And after Sukhchain is Paige, and then we have Abdul Yusi, and Abdul may have already spoken, but there might be somebody with the similar name, so I don't want to conflate that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Sukhchain Banwat. I have been with the Uber and over 6.5 years, almost 7 years. And I just want to say they just, more charging customer more money. And we do have, even we can show the reality. And then, we get over and over, cut down and down. But we talking about 52 quarter and a penny, 2 quarter and a penny. We are talking about the customers or the companies, they can afford that. That's not a big deal. The customer can afford pay surge $10, $15, $20, $30. What's the 51 cents? They are making a big deal on the 51 cents. And those people get hit, they're no fault, they get deactivation because it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do, and they are just out of luck. And their payments are there, their all expenses are there. And so, that's the main concern. Those people don't care because there's no limit on the cards. You guys need to take care of that big deal. That's why they don't care if the 500 driver get deactivation. So who cares? They have 30,000, 29,500 still working, Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So Paige, good to see you, and hold tight for just a second. Then after Paige, Abdul, and it looks like Gedi, G-E-D-I, Mohammed. Please.
Hi, I'm Paige Malott, and I'm with the Seattle Streetcar Coalition. I'm here today in support of the Fair Share Plan for funding the streetcar. Last year, over 24 million ride-hailing trips originated in the city of Seattle, a 16% increase year over year. Over half of those trips took place in the downtown corridor, which will be served by the Center City streetcar. The Fair Share Plan will raise funds to complete the streetcar on First Avenue, which will serve 20,000 daily passengers. With 65% of the region's carbon emissions coming from transportation, a tax on ride-hailing to fund the streetcar, powered by 100% green energy, is a step that we can take today towards climate action, addressing congestion, and becoming a more sustainable city. Thank you for your support of the Fair Share Plan to help improve mobility downtown.
Okay, thank you. I've just been given a note from Council Central staff that they do not have the elasticity document that we talked about earlier from the mayor. We'll post it on the council's website as soon as we get our hands on it. I know where it is in my office, but well, that'll have to wait until we're done today. Thank you. Abdul?
Hi, Madam Chair, Council President, and the other council members. My name is Abdul Yusuf. I'm with Eastside for Hire and also from East African community. I'm here for, I heard about a coalition that is support. One of the things that are missing is our agenda, what we are against is not more about the merits of what has been proposed, but it's the venue. We created another coalition, which we will supply you some information. It's called Not on Our Backs Without Benefit. Basically, this is the only industry where minority is the majority of the drivers. And the way this thing is proposed is in Africa, we have a saying that says, a hungry donkey carrying a bucket of honey. So really, what we are up against is if there is money to be raised for 5 years, this body has been talking about driver, both taxi and all for hire and TNC drivers to put money in their pockets. This does not put one dime in there. And neither does benefit the communities of which these drivers are from. So we ask you, and we submitted this letter to you to take into consideration that our drivers and their customers needs to take a fair share of the city's burden being imposed on one community and its drivers. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdul. Good to see you. Getty and Abu Bakr, I know we had one gentleman speaking with that name. Is there somebody else? Same name?
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Okay. Getty, is there Yafet? Yeah. Okay, please.
My name is Yafet. I work for Uber for 2 years. Last year, my account is deactivated. They said because of the dog, but I don't know it's whether service dog or not. There is no any evidence. When the rider, she came, she was a young lady. I asked her, is it service dog? Yes. Do you have an ID for the dog? She said no. And she started to fight before she go to the car. She started to fight with me. And she started to talk unnecessary words. And I scared these ladies, young ladies. And I said to her, okay, please try to speak properly and politely. And she started to fight before she comes the car. And I said, I afraid her because of her behavior. Yeah, and I have to, I didn't accept the ride. Then they said they deactivate my account. But I gave about 4,300, right, with 4.9. I haven't any issue, any problem, and yeah, this is the problem. And please, they speak with me on the phone, but the guy who I tried to explain him, I didn't understand him what he said, and yeah, that's the problem. Please, for the next, if we have a service dog, it's better to inform in the app, this is a service dog or not. Yeah, if we have like that, we don't have any issue. I drive also for Lyft. I don't have any problem with 5.0 rate. Please, for the next, yeah, to explain for Uber or Lyft more information in the app.
Nice, thank you. Can I ask you a question? How long did it take for you to get reinstated back on the app?
Sorry?
How long, after you were taken off, how long did it take for you to get reinstated so you could drive again?
They didn't reinstate.
Oh, so you still are not driving?
Yeah, I drive now only for Lyft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your story. Okay, we've got, I'm going to give you another phone number, 206-830-0023. If that sounds like you, please come on up. If not, we'll move on to Babs. Kenta. Another phone number, 206-209-9724. Yay, excellent. And what is your name?
My first name is Him McTriam.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go by Felix. I was driving for Uber and I was deactivated last year, September 10th, and it took months going back and forth basically with Uber before there was no response at some point. They just decided to cease any communication they weren't gonna explain. And so I filed an arbitration, and that hasn't got into place until April 24th. So 6 months later, finally, there's a chance to speak to those people. And that I want to know what safeguard is this arbitration different than an AAA arbitration the city is going to provide, because Uber has a lot of tricks in hands, I believe, that they will tell you, or they tell the arbiter that the contract language is that they have all rights, basically. You're waiving most of your rights already. I don't know how that is going to affect this arbitration process. Is it going to use the same standard here? And I think that Uber, in many different instances, in front of city, in front of county, in front of state, they have made statements that they are not following. They make statements like, oh, we have 3 strike rules. But in this context of arbitration, they deny that because it's not official policy. It's not posted anywhere. So they were just able to just push away their responsibility, basically, even though they made those statements ensuring whatever policy at the time they want to pass through legislation. And so, yeah, I haven't got reinstated since. And actually recently, exactly 1 year later, now I need to file for bankruptcy. So that's just this crazy process that you go through, like spending legal time, or that they don't treat people like people, really. For them, it's more like a number. So
Thank you for your story.
yeah, I really want to know, like, how you guys.
No, I appreciate your coming. Yednek Olana, and then it looks like oh boy, Sefahadjni.
Hi,
Yednek?
me next? Yeah, that's me. Thanks for giving us this chance. I just heard about this meeting like yesterday. I wasn't ready for proper speech or something, but I have issue with Uber. So I've been driving with them like for the last 7 years, but I didn't drive like for a while because of school stuff. So I come back, and then after that, like they cancel like my airport trips. You know, most of our trip is like from airport to downtown because I'm driving like Uber Black. This issues like, you know, touch most of my friends, like all drivers, like, you know. So when we go to the office and then ask them, like, you know, what's the reason they closing our account? So they don't have a reason, like they don't have any reason, because they said, oh, we're not the one like closing your account. The one from California people, they are the one closing your account. So we cannot do anything for you. So we back and forth like with them for so many times. So I don't know why they even there. I don't know why they got paid, but they don't have answer for us. So we cannot contact the California people. It's been like this like for a year. So we don't get answer. Like we don't know when they're gonna open it back. We don't have any clue for that. So our job is like, you know, so stressful because of this situation. Whenever we wake up, like we don't know if it's gonna close or deactivate it or we're gonna work. We don't have any clue. So every day is like so stressful. So we want someone like to answer our questions. Time is up. So I have a lot to talk about. Okay, next time.
But thank
Thanks.
you for coming and
Sure.
telling us your story.
Sure.
Okay, so can you just hold 30 seconds here? The next one, Pedro, and then Awadallah and Adam, in that order.
Hello, good evening. Good evening. My name is Safahaddin, and I'm driving Uber Black. I've been driving like 6 years, and like I don't know, I don't have clue. They deactivated my phone. Like I have an app still working, but they are not giving me from airport to downtown, and from downtown to airport. And afternoon, I'm babysitter. I take care of my daughter, and I got 4 kids. So, like I don't have any income right now. Like without anything, I don't want to talk a lot because he explained, and a lot of drivers, we had the same issue. And please, you guys, you have a power. Please, you need to stop this Uber. Uber is technically killing us. So I don't have choice. Like I have 4 kids. I'm not taking anywhere my kids. They're American citizens, you know. I cannot afford even like my rent. Next, my steps are gonna be like maybe homeless, you know. Like please, guys, to stop them. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Awadallah, then Adam, and then Almami.
Yeah, Pedro Espinoza, thank you, Council, for giving me the time to speak. I belong to a labor organization called the Carpenters Union. It's a pretty big organization, and we believe that anybody has a right to want to unionize. We believe that if the people in those entities feel like there's an issue and they want to come together, then let them. Last time I checked, a little piece in the Constitution said, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think we're tending to forget that, especially when we have owners at the top that use fear tactics upon these workers to say, hey, it's going to impact you, you're going to take the cost, but yet you see them always rising to the top. Hearing these stories from these workers here, it's another example of how they're frustrated, they're not being represented, but yet they're the ones that are out there doing the work. You never see the owner of Uber, Lyft, or any of these entities coming down and actually doing the job because they know it's hard. And yes, even though they drive, it is an issue because they're putting themselves out there for dangerous acts, people robbing them, things that they encounter, hostile people. So if they want to unionize, let them. It's not going to hurt them. It's actually going to better their lives. You hear these people that are actually complaining that they're not getting a response back from the organization. That means they have no representation. What do? Now they sit there. This man over here just spoke. He doesn't know where he's going to get his income. So if they're pushing for them to not unionize, shame on them, because this is a free country and they have the right to do that.
Thank you, Pedro. Awadala, Adam, and then Almami, and then we're calling it a wrap.
Hello, the city. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Almami. I'm pleading with you for you to help fight against unfair deactivation. Because I was deactivated, I was also deactivated by Uber in the year, I think 1.5 years ago for no reason. And I'm pleading with you, the council or whatever, the city, to help us fight against that. And when I went to their office like 1.5 years ago, 2 or 3 times, I was referred to. They told me that they were not at fault, that the city did it. And I went to the city. They ran my driving record, everything. They said that on their side, everything was okay. They did not do it. The Uber is a separate entity. I have to find out maybe an arbitrator, or I realized that procedure was going to take a long time. I just decided to ignore the whole thing and just move on. I've been doing Lyft, but the truth of the matter is, if we're doing both at the same time, that helps us a lot, because if one is not busy, you can be the other one may be busy. But if you rely on you only doing one, and that one is, I'm doing Lyft, if that one is slow, it means I will be there stranded without getting a request. So in that case, I'm pleading with you, the city, so that you can help us fight against unfair deactivation.
Great, thank you. Do we have an Adam? And Adam, it looks like it might be, I don't know, FAR. Okay, and then Almami?
Yeah, I'm Almami.
Okay, was there an Awadala? Okay, then I think everybody who signed up has had a chance to speak. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your comments, and colleagues, thank you for hanging in there. What's that, sir?
Can I be able to speak about
Why don't you go ahead and go? I'll take the last one. Okay, come on, we'll do it. We'll take one more, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to make it very quick and short.
And would you give us your name, please?
Mulgeta
Okay.
Berhani.
Thank you.
I was deactivated about a month ago. The rider has complained that I was under influence during daytime. I went to the office. They couldn't be able to do anything because there's someone who pushed the button from side. And I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit nervous. And I tried to prove that. I went to get a drug and alcohol test, but at that time, everything was closed. I did it, I think it was on Monday. That happened on Friday, and I proved that on Monday, that drug and alcohol test that reads 6 weeks back, that everything comes up negative. It cost me from my pocket $314. I asked them, I submit the documents of the drug and alcohol test and the expense to reimburse me. I haven't heard anything from them yet. This is how they do it. I mean, there should be kind of mechanism that if someone has, suspicious of that, they could be able to do the test with driver expense, and if it comes negative, then that's the driver's fault. I mean, the company has to pay for it. If it comes positive, then the driver has to swallow that.
Thank you very much for your
All right,
testimony. Okay, again, thank you everybody for being here. It's been a long day for everyone. Appreciate your comments, and this meeting's adjourned. We'll pick it up Monday again. We have full council, and our afternoon session will start approximately 2:30. Thank you.